Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our 11 o'clock session on money matters. You know, kind of how I've always liked to do my sessions. I like to bring you people that I use and trust myself. So I'm really, really glad to be able to welcome Stuart with us today. He has worked with myself and my company, offering lots of financial advice. I trust him with my own finances, and so and he always offers me really, really solid advice. So today, you know, Stuart's going to take us through a few things that are relevant to kind of money right now. Obviously, COVID's kind of had quite a difficult effect on many of us, and made many of us question our own kind of what we're doing with our finances. So and then at the end, Stuart will be able to answer any questions you have. And remember that you can ask them on the chat anonymously, so you don't have to worry about your name coming up either. But welcome, Stuart.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I hope you all had a relaxed Eid break. If we could keep questions until the end, it would be appreciated. For the first 7 or 8 minutes, I'm actually going to go through a story that outlines how I approach financial planning, so bear with me. Last year, one of my friends was getting married in Italy. It also happened to coincide with the Italian Formula 1 Grand Prix 7 days later. I'm a pretty big motor racing fan. So rather than flying in for a wedding, back to Dubai, work a week and then back to Formula 1, which would be a total waste of time, I mentioned to a couple of friends who were also attending the wedding whether we wanted to make use of that 7 days. So we decided to stay in Italy in between. As most of the group were of the opinion that we would just decide what we'd do, where we go, when we actually get there, I decided to actually take charge and started to make a plan. We knew the starting point. Emirates flies direct to Bologna. It was close to the wedding venue. And then from there, our main goal was to get to the F1, which is just outside Milan. Emirates fly also direct. So the first thing that I actually did, and if you can bear with me on this, modern technology. Okay, hopefully you'll be able to see this, but I looked at a roadmap of Italy. You know, there's no point going direct to the wedding, going direct from the wedding to Milan. It would have been on motorways. We'd been there just under 4 hours, and to spend 7 days in Milan was just pretty pointless. So I researched Bologna, researched Milan, and the cities and places of interest in between. I came up with 3 in particular, so Florence, Genoa, and Turin. So when I started to break down how to get there, because obviously it's quite a long journey, I decided to break it down into sections. So how we'd get from Bologna to the wedding venue, how we get from the wedding venue up to Florence, and so on, and so on, and so on. So what we needed to do, and what I needed to do, was to look at the rough times taken and also budget. So look at absolute costs. Absolute costs include flights, hotels, car hire. Then you have the probable costs, so the food and entertainment, and also to put money aside for an emergency fund. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so when I sent the group the travel itinerary and the budgeting costs, they all made fun of me, but over a few drinks, a few days later, I made my case. They still laughed, but agreed to do it. So booked the flights, the hotels that we decided on. I gave them some options depending on costs, and of course the cars for the trip. So we were set. We flew into Bologna, picked up the cars. Unfortunately, we had to actually upgrade one of them, as some had slightly bigger suitcases for the trip than others. So that was the first unforeseen cost. We'd already planned a couple of nights in the city before the wedding. So after dropping off the bags, parking the car, showering, we explored the sights in the city that afternoon. We didn't have any idea where we were going to eat, so we asked at the hotel reception. We spoke to them about what we were looking for, and they recommended a couple of restaurants. We decided on one, and they booked it for us. That evening, we ate at a true Bologna restaurant, full of locals, fantastic food, and some of the best wines that their sommelier recommended to us. And it was also cheap too, certainly within budget. But during that evening, we found out that Ferrari, Lamborghini, and Pagani had museums, that there were less than an hour outside of Bologna. Now, I couldn't believe that we didn't know this. So the following morning, we got up early, we changed our plans for the day and headed to all three. We spent money to get into the museums and factories, and that was the second added and unforeseen expenditure. So before heading back to Bologna for our final night, exploring most of the city and the bars, and then on to the wedding in Florence Hills the following day. The wedding was beautiful, weather couldn't have been better, all taken care of by the bride and groom, apart from room costs. That had all actually been budgeted for. 2 days later, after the wedding, we were off to Florence for a night, so half-day sightseeing, onto another hotel recommended restaurant for dinner, then on the road again to Genoa, as planned. Now, on the way, we did want to go to see Cinque Terre, but realised the time and effort it would take couldn't be warranted. So if we were going to get to Genoa on time and on schedule. So instead, we stopped off at the idyllic Portofino for a stunning lunch in the harbour. Now, I could go on with this story, but it's pretty much the same. Everything went to plan. That is until we arrived in Milan. So the person who was in charge of getting the actual entry passes for Formula One thought we'd be able to just pay for them on the day, which normally you actually could. What he didn't think about was the fact that Ferrari were catching up with Mercedes in the championship, and the entry-only tickets are sold out on the weekend of the wedding. The other tickets available were just far too expensive. Now, we ended up watching it in a bar in Milan full of locals supporting Ferrari. The atmosphere was immense, and we still enjoyed it. We just didn't get to the actual race itself. None of us really minded. We had amazing Italian adventure, saw some jaw-dropping architecture, ate some of the best food and wines I think I've ever eaten and tasted in 46 years of being on this planet. And I wasn't the only one. No one can believe we'd actually packed so much into the 11-day trip without feeling rushed. And there is only one reason for that. And I hope you get the gist of what I'm trying to say here. If not, we'll come on to it a little bit later. Okay, let me just share this with you. Okay, apologies for this. Okay, so these are the 4 areas that we look at as a financial advisor. And 4 areas which I'm speaking to Tash about doing webinars on: debt, protection, accumulation of assets and wealth, and distribution. Each of those can always be broken down as well. So from the protection side, looking at emergency funds, look at life insurance, disability, long-term care, on savings for education and retirement. But today, specifically, we're just going to be talking about debt. Okay, so it's about taking control of your finances, about taking control of the debt. You own it, don't let it take control of you. So don't put your head in the sand and hope it's going to go away. You know, in these times, COVID-19, salaries have been reduced. Some people have been made unemployed, made redundant. If you do just put your head in the sand, you're going to spiral into depth of darkness. You'll start to believe that there's no way out. It's not good for your health. It's certainly not good for your family. And it doesn't solve anything. But don't despair. The best thing to do is breathe. It's all about planning. The key to every aspect of successful financial advice, and actually most parts of life, including Italian holidays, but you need to know where you're starting from. And with this in mind, most of my successful clients put together an income and expenditure spreadsheet that they start off updating daily. And when they're used to doing that and they're more comfortable, they move on to updating it on a weekly basis. So when it comes down to income, we look at everything. Okay, global income, everything that comes into a bank account in your name or yours and your partner's name. And then the most important, obviously, is expenditure. What do you actually spend your money on, and how much do you spend? You need to compartmentalize the spending. So look at, again, absolute costs. You know, rent, mortgage if you have one, what credit card debt you have, if you have any personal loans, any car loans, how much you've got to pay that on a monthly basis. If you're paying into savings plans already, how much is that? Education costs, legal bills, food, insurances, whether that be home, car, medical, even costs, and it is an absolute cost, for domestic help, and something like fuel as well. And then to put down and break down into discretionary costs, so entertainment, whether that's coffee, socialising, brunching, looking at clothing and holidays as well, and expenditure on holidays. Then separately, have a look at your assets. So what you have in bank accounts, wherever they are in the world, what you have in savings plans, if you have any, or you have in pensions. You may have worked in the UK, you may have access to some of that money. If you have property, what the value of that is, what equity you might have, but also personal items. You need to then go back to your absolute costs and look at them again. Are they absolute? Can anything be changed in them? So with the rent, can you downsize, or can you negotiate with the landlord to get a price, a better price? Do you have to pay in one check? Can you put it over 4? Can you put it over 6? Or can you pay monthly? Everything helps. With a mortgage, how much equity do you have in the property? What type of mortgage are you on? Is it interest only or capital and interest repayment? What interest rates are you paying? Can you remortgage? Can you get a better rate? Or can you take equity out of the house to pay off debts that you may have? Can you take a payment holiday to save some money? Credit cards and personal loans and car loans. If you're lucky enough to have a property with equity in it, then obviously you can pay these off. But if not, you need to look at them. How many do you have? What's the total minimum monthly payments on each? How much interest are you paying on them? Who are they with? There's a possibility that you can switch to another card provider for a better deal. You need to do some research on it. Understand also, especially in times like COVID-19, you can actually negotiate with the banks and bring the payments down, or even the outstanding amount. Deduct the interest. Offer to pay 60% of the outstanding amount. It does work. Before you even go to a bank or credit card or provider, you need to plan. Okay? You need to put an income and expenditure in place. So savings plans, if you have them, do you need to currently put money into them? Can you take payment holidays? Can you take a partial surrender? What's that value? Okay, with education, costs can't really be changed. Same as DEWA. On the food, you might want to go to Lulu instead of going to Spinney's or Marks and Spencer's. What's eaten? Look at what's wasted. On the insurances, shop around for home insurance. Shop around for car. If you have to pay medical, then do the same with that. There are comparison websites. Domestic help, do you actually really need it? Can you do it yourself? If you really do need it, maybe look at using someone that's less expensive. Use your assets wisely as well. So bank accounts, don't just use the money you've got in the bank accounts to pay off debt. You need to have an emergency fund. Don't use all of it to pay off debt. Savings plans, how much are they worth? Can you withdraw some of the money? Property, can you remortgage? Even look at personal items. I mean, it depends, I suppose, on how much in debt you are. But a lot of people have 3 or 4 watches or 5 or 6 bags and jewelry that's not used. They're all materialistic objects. Keep what you really and absolutely need and sell the rest. Once you've done this, then you've got a new starting point. Okay, you have the same goal in the end, and that is to be debt-free. But in between the start point and in between the end point, you have to make sure you make short-term goals in between. Smaller goals so you can tick them off and cross them out. Doing this will make you feel as though you've actually accomplished something. Because you have. And start with the smallest of debts, get that paid off, and then on to the next, and the next, and the next, until you're debt free. Now, every person's plan will be different short-term goals, but the end result will be the same. I think that's really enough that I can do over a webinar on debt. There are other areas that will be covered, and we'll do that across other sessions, such as setting foundations for a secure financial future, so life's events, what ifs, protecting the family and protecting you. From then, building and creating a sound financial future, and ending up really with distributing your legacy, distributing your financial legacy in the most tax efficient way. Now's the time, if you've got any kind of specific questions, we can go through these. But just to let you know, I am available for one-to-one meetings or telephone calls, and we can go through individual circumstances. If this is of interest, then please get in contact with Polly or Natasha, and we can organise from there. So Tash, I'm going to kind of hand it back to you and back to the audience with any questions.
Oh, hello. Okay, so we have, we've got a couple of questions, but please do now use the opportunity to send in more you have. Our first question is, in these times, how would you suggest selling things like watches?
Okay, so with watches, there are specialist second-hand buyers. There's one on Beach Road. There's actually one in DIFC as well. So I'd go in there and I would just ask, I'd ask how much they were prepared to pay for a particular watch. Do your research beforehand as well. You don't want to be ripped off. So, if you paid 30, 40, 50,000 dirhams for a watch, second-hand value certainly might not be as much as that, but do the research online. It's very easy to do. Get a ballpark price and then go in and see what will be offered. If you think it's too low, you can always sell them online.
Okay. Our next is there anything that can be done to dissolve or consolidate credit card debts in the market? Sorry, is there anything that can be done to dissolve or consolidate credit card debts in this market? I know you mentioned obviously being able to, negotiate now. But how would you actually practically suggest going about that?
Right. Okay. I would plan. Okay. I'd put together an income and expenditure. I would see what I have left. I would speak to the credit card companies. I'd speak to the bank. Don't do it over the phone. It's the worst thing you can do because you're not going to speak to the right person. Best thing to do would be to go into your branch and organise a meeting with the manager and sit down with him and explain the situation and just say that, this is what I've got in terms of debt. You are one of them. Can I put a personal loan together that's going to be less interest over a longer period of time with smaller payments? If that's a yes, then fantastic. If it's gone past that point, then you just negotiate with them and directly to say that I really want to pay this off. That's why I'm here. I've put together an expenditure schedule. I can't afford to pay this. What can you do? If I offer to pay 60% over a 12-month period, are you able to do that? Obviously, it depends on how much debt you actually have.
Yeah, it's better for them to get something back right now than nothing, correct? So
absolutely, yeah, exactly the same with a car loan, exactly the same with a personal loan. If you are in the position to own a property, look at changing the mortgage. You may be paying on an interest only, and if you are, then that may have been set 2 years ago. So the interest rates have certainly dropped. There are so many mortgage brokers here, and I have contacts. We have an in-house team, but if it's specifically for mortgages in the UAE, I've got contacts who you can speak to, and they'll be able to offer you maybe a better rate. If you're paying capital and interest, that's a sizable chunk of money that's being paid on a monthly basis. So change it to interest only. Even if it's only.
I have a mortgage here, and and I think I'm 4 years in. But so you would suggest speaking to somebody about that? I mean, I know that obviously there's mortgage setup fees, which are about 28,000 dirhams when I did it. It was a lot. So do you obviously have to factor that in as well?
Yeah, so I'm not a specialist in mortgages. Okay, I'm a specialist. I've spent almost 13 years in the UAE doing financial services. My clients are global. They're from Norway all the way through to New Zealand. Yes, there's always going to be a setup fee, but you need to speak to someone who knows more about it. You need to speak to a mortgage person, and they'll be able to give you options. Now, it might not be the right thing, but you've got to explore that idea.
Okay. Let's go back. We've got a few more questions come in. Would you suggest getting a small loan to cover a credit card?
It's a difficult situation. Unless you're consolidating debt, I would never really go from one debt to another debt on the same value. Interest rates might be lower. I'd speak to your bank, okay, on that front and see what's the best thing to do. Because it could well be that you can just turn around and say that I don't want the card anymore. I can't pay this off. I can't pay 7,000 or 3,000 dirhams a month on this card for the next 5 years. All I seem to be doing is paying off the interest. What can be done? Let's just settle it now. Let's just let me pay 50 or 60%. Go in at 50, you always negotiate. But you can normally get between 30 and 40% off because most of it's going to be interest that's been accumulated.
But will that affect your credit rating with the central bank?
It will, yes. It depends on how quickly you want to be out of debt. It depends on your situation. It depends if you're leaving the country in 6 months. It depends if you've been made redundant. There's so many different scenarios.
Yeah.
Each one of my clients is very different. It's not a one glove fits all. I'll go back to the roadmap. A little bit off the ball, I know, and apologies if it was, but it still showed that there are so many different ways you can get to the same destination. You've got to pick a way. You've got to choose it. You've got to choose what's best for you. And make goals in between, and make sure you follow it as well.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, a lot of people are having to make tough decisions to leave the country right now. So I guess if that's the situation, then obviously negotiating, getting out, it doesn't really matter on your credit rating here. But versus if you are obviously here long term, then obviously that's a different conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there are credit card companies, there are banks that will help with that, and you can take out a card specifically, to transfer that over to, and it will be a lower rate. Again, it depends what situation you're currently in. I can do a generalisation. I can talk generally about certain things, but unless I'm face to face with one person, I don't know what their circumstances are. Can't give them the advice.
No. Okay, right. Next question. What's the minimum and good percentage ratio of savings to expenditure to aim for during these times?
During COVID-19 times, or just in general? I mean, if you're looking in general,
any during now this time, right?
Yeah, true. I mean, we had the global financial crisis between 2007, 2008, which is literally just when I arrived. I always look at it from a UK basis and standpoint, because that's where I was brought up, and that's where I lived for 32 years of my life. Okay. I would, you've got to be looking. I mean, if I pay tax in the UK, I'm going to be paying 20%. Okay, realistically, that's tax that goes to the government. If you move over here, it's tax free. You do pay a little bit extra. There are some hidden charges here and there, but you've got to expect to put away at least 20% of what you're saving. 20% of income should really go into savings. And I'm not talking about savings plans. I'm talking about setting up an emergency fund. And you need to have that. And there are many reasons why. COVID-19, it was really unexpected. No one knew it was going to happen. No one knew it was going to cause such devastation, and it has. We're at the tip of the iceberg on this. But yeah, I'd be looking at putting 20% away as a minimum.
Okay, slightly related. So in terms of financial planning, ideally, how much percentage of income should be debt, savings, and expenditure?
Zero debt. Okay, unless you're going to have a mortgage. You pay so much interest on credit cards and personal loans. If you don't need it, then don't buy it. We've got into this culture since 2007, 2008 of borrowing money because it's cheap. I understand if there's going to be an end point to it and then an end game by owning your own house or owning your own apartment. But to get a car, really, to buy an expensive watch, to go on holiday, you've got to be able to afford these before you put it on a credit card, and pay off. That's what everyone should be doing on a monthly basis. I know that doesn't happen. I've been in situations and I've done it myself. You build a credit card debt up, and then it's kind of like, right, okay, what do I do? And then you've got to realise you've got to pay it back off, and it takes longer than you think. The interest is in there.
Yeah.
So in terms of, sorry, I was getting away from the point, but I will come back on. In terms of percentage-wise, you shouldn't really be having any debt. Savings should be between 20 and 40% of salary, depending on where you live. I was talking about rent earlier and about how you can actually cut costs. Absolutely. The market's not even at its bottom now. Rents are now being able to be paid over 6 or 12 months, so over 6 or 12 checks. Some are actually even able to pay by credit card, which I wouldn't recommend to do unless you've got the money, then obviously pay it off and build up points. But yeah, it's... If you can negotiate, you can cut those costs. You can have more. Right? Dubai is an amazing place, okay, but you can get swept up in it all. I know personally, the first 6 months that I was here, completely. I was a new kid in town, going out, partying, drinking, eating, out with friends, and you can just spend an absolute fortune. But you do need to cut back. You should be in Dubai for one reason, that's to make money. Okay, and it means saving. I'm not talking about regular, so I'm not always talking about regular savings plans, even though they do have a place in financial planning. But yeah, you're here to save money. So that should really be your top priority.
Okay. And I mean, if right now people do have any spare money and savings, where would you, is there anywhere good to invest, or what would you recommend they do with any spare cash they might have?
If it's over 6 months salary, so look at a monthly salary times that by 6. If it's over and above that in sitting in a bank account, then I'd look at investing that. Okay? If you're less than 3 months or less than 6 months, I'd keep that money just sitting in a bank. Right? You don't know what's going to happen, and you've got to have that emergency fund. However, if there is money over and above that, there are always opportunities. I'd like to discuss that and ways of being able to do that across maybe a number of seminars, webinars, okay, and to concentrate, because it's a huge area. It really is. And there are pros and cons of regular savings plans compared to using an online trading platform. And again, it depends on each individual.
Yeah, so a couple of related. So, what are some of the low risk, safe opportunities to consider in terms of investment right now?
Safe options. I mean, investing is a risk anyway. Okay, you've got to understand that your money is going to go up, or can go up, also can come down. Now we are in a position where markets are quite low, but you've got to expect these to stay low for a while. I'm expecting markets to come back in the next 3 years. So you can't have a short-term 1 year or 2 year mindset. It has got to be over 7 to 10, 15 to 20, 25 years even. There are opportunities. I mean, if you don't want to go into mutual funds, or there are something called ETFs, exchange traded funds. So it's putting money into the FTSE 100 or the FTSE 250 or the S&P 500. You're just putting money into that, and it's investing, and it does whatever that market does. Okay, so if the S&P 500 goes up by 10%, whatever money you put in goes up by 10%. The only problem is that you're invested in all of those companies within that exchange. Yeah. My own kind of thought about where's the best opportunities to invest would be technology and healthcare. Okay, and there's two main reasons. We're sitting here today. There's 20 of us, or 18 or 20 of us on the call. I'm sitting here in my villa in basically Jebel Ali, the other side of Jebel Ali Hotel, and you're all dotted around. But we can chat to each other. This is the way ahead, and it's going to be like this for a long time. I think business is going to change. We've seen Zoom share price go up quite a bit. So technology sector, and there are some amazing even ETFs, but also managed funds that you can get into. Healthcare, obviously, every government and every economy around the world has realised that they were so wrong about not investing into healthcare, and it's a great opportunity. So that includes biotechs as well, and there are platforms, and we as a company have access to providers and different providers that can all access this over a medium or short. My short is 7 years, by the way. Medium, kind of 15, and long term, 25 years or up to retirement. So there are some great opportunities out there. It's just whether it's going to be good for you or not. There isn't a one glove fits all.
Okay, so slightly related. So if anyone's considering investing in stock at the moment, any beginner's tips?
It's very difficult. I mean, unless you're going to sit in front of a computer screen, do your research, and sit there and watch what's happening in the markets. Even the experts haven't got a clue what's going on. Okay, and they really don't. If we look back at what happened at the start of COVID-19 in China and how quickly it spread, we saw a drop in stock markets. The FTSE dropped 35% in 3 weeks. And that's a big drop, and in such a short period of time. Stupid thing was, though, stocks were going down, gold wasn't going up, because that's normally a safe haven. Even bonds dropped. So there was no correlation in what stocks were doing against what other assets classes were doing, which is the norm. I'd be looking at ETFs or managed funds in particular sectors. Okay, it's about diversification. Okay, you've got to be diverse, because some asset classes go down, others are going to go up. And I've got a chart which shows over a 15-year period all the different asset classes, what was first, second, third, all the way through to bottom. And every year is different. Okay, so you're not going to be able to predict it. But going in as a generalization into certain areas, whether it be biotech, whether it be global equity income, you've got to be diversified in what you're investing in. As a beginner, I would never, ever suggest or recommend going into individual stocks. I mean, you can do, just be very careful. It's so easy to lose money.
Okay. Any tech or healthcare funds you recommend or that can be accessed through you? How does one go about this, and what's the minimum investment for this kind of thing? Apologies if this is too basic.
No, not at all. It's where I start off with all clients. There are two different ways you can access. One would be through an online platform. There are a lot of versions out there. Another way would be through a regular savings plan. Again, this is what I wanted to talk about in the next webinar, if we were going to put one on. As there are so many different connotations, but yes, you can invest through me, as in not myself. You're not going to give me the money, but you'd be giving money to a reputable global insurance company that can access hundreds of different funds on a platform, but you'd be tied in. So you'd be looking at 5 years, you're looking at 7 years, 15 or 20. It depends what you want. Those types of plans I recommend for people that can't save. Okay, because the other type of plan is actually through an online portal, which means you have to go in, you have to send the money on a monthly basis. You have to then go in and pick and choose the funds every time you put money in. It's great. Are you going to follow it? And this is the whole point. If you've got a plan, you stick to it, you follow it. Are you going to have time? Are you going to have time to do the research? You're not going to have. They're really cost effective for one reason. You have to do everything yourself.
Yeah.
You can't just go in and cost you less than 0.5% a year to run the platform, and you've got this amazing fund manager. You're not going to have a financial service person or financial advisor like myself saying to you, right, okay, sitting down with you, going through your leads, go through what you want, going through actually what you really need, and then combining it, and fitting it together. Yes, I mean, okay, so sorry, I was digressing a little bit, but in terms of minimum, you'd be looking at $350 a month. Okay, maximum can be whatever it might be. Again, it all depends on the term, it depends on what you want to do and what you want to see out of it.
Okay. So is now a good time to invest in property in Dubai?
Okay, I've been here for 13 years. Unless the company is paying for your mortgage, then I'm always going to say no, unfortunately. This country is very short and very kind of, how can I put it? It's not very far into its lifespan of a property industry. Realistically, what are we? 15 years, maybe 20 years, 25 years of push into, actually 25 years max, into a cycle that could be, look at the UK, 300 years old. Okay, so the peaks and troughs in the UK are going to be over a longer period of time. Here, you're just not going to know. I always believe that you never own your property here either. Okay, with all the sand, with all the wind, with everything that goes on in the elements, destroys very quickly. A lot of apartment buildings are only built for a 10-year period. They should be taken down. They should be demolished and then others rebuilt. If Dubai plans on expanding further, you're just going to see further falls in rental prices, further falls in property prices. You've got to have a look at global pandemic as well and what effect it's going to have on Dubai. There are other property areas in terms of countries that I'm a lot more familiar with, that are a lot more solid. And I've got to say that's Europe and UK. So property, yes, I think you should have it. Definitely. In my very own opinion, I believe that it's probably best to buy a property in Europe or the UK rather than the UAE.
As a property guy, Stuart, that's not great news.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but I've said it from day one, and I still stick to it today. Unless the company you're working for, and you've got a 10-year contract, and they're going to pay X amount for your living costs, that's going to cover the mortgage on the property. Absolutely, 100%. I'd say go for that, buy a property, because at the end, someone else is paying it for you. So that's what you want.
Yeah,
that is what you want. And with rental prices at the moment dropping and dropping and dropping, why buy when you can rent?
Yeah, but if you can get your mortgage is less than what the rent would be, and you're here long term, and you buy in a certain desirable area, I'm right in thinking that there's still it's not always a bad thing to buy. No.
It's not always a bad thing, but again, it's timing, and you don't know what's going to happen.
No.
If you'd have said to me January, or actually November, December last year, do you think the property market's at its bottom? I said, well, that's in Dubai. I probably said, yes, I think it's almost there. There may be a little bit more to go. And then suddenly COVID-19 hits. Then we're seeing prices going down, and we're seeing rents going down because people are unfortunately having salary cuts. And losing jobs. So the rents have got to become more affordable. Now, I moved out of the city 4 years ago, and I've lived just by a Gerard Alley hotel for the past 4 years. I've cut my rental cost in half, basically. It still takes me 20 minutes to get into the office, okay, because there's no traffic. I'm going against it all the time. For me, it was the best thing. But again, I sat down, I planned, I looked and wanted to know what I wanted to do in terms of financial planning myself. And that was one area. I just thought, actually, I don't need to go out every night of the week. No, I don't need to do this. I don't need to brunch every Friday. So I'm going to cut the costs. I'm going to buy property, and I have, but not here. It's been in the UK.
Okay. And we have one more question at the moment. If anyone does have any other questions, get them in quickly while you can. What are your thoughts on life insurance? Is it an absolute must?
Yes. No, I mean, it's a one-word answer. Yes. I mean, it depends on your religion, obviously, and it depends on your interpretation of your religion. So I do have some Muslim clients that have life insurance. I have other Muslim clients that don't, because it's their interpretation. If you have a family, then it's the first thing you should do. And I'm talking about, it's not the main breadwinner here. It's both partners have got to have it. The most important part is critical illness cover. Okay, a lot of people go, medical cover, I've got it covered. Yeah, no, it's going to cover for this, cover for that. Again, this is in another webinar, but the basics are, medical cover, it covers your costs, as in medical bills. So medical bills with the at the hospital. What happens if you're out for 6 months? Okay, if you do get diagnosed with a critical illness, you've still got 6 months of bills. If it's terminal, I always look on the worst case scenario. If this is terminal, okay, your husband or your wife is at work, so she's bringing in some money. Do you really think that they want to be at work whilst you've got 6 or 12 months left to live? It's like, no. So the critical illness cover will give you a lump sum of money to be able to help with costs and with living costs. If it is the main breadwinner, then you've got to have it. You've got to look at it. Otherwise, you're going to put yourself in a situation where you're going to be in debt. do if you've got savings, do you want to wipe them out just because you're ill for 6 months or 12 months? Being diagnosed with critical illness to going back to work, be a 24-month period. I know some clients have been diagnosed with critical illnesses. My cousin had to have a double mastectomy. The amount of time it takes and the amount of money you lose, you don't realise. You don't realise that you've got bills to pay. You need feeding, the kids need feeding, husband needs feeding. Who's going to take care of you? I mean, life cover and critical illness cover is, and a will, are the cornerstones of financial advice. So it's the first thing you talk about. And if someone turned around to me and said, don't want to talk about it, then I don't particularly want to deal with them as a client. It is very simple. I know it sounds very harsh, but it's very true.
I have all those things. Clearly, I got good finance.
No, I know. You're fine.
Well, we don't have any. We've run out of questions now. If anybody does have any questions that they want to ask Stuart, then by all means message me, natasha@tishtash.com or polly@tishtash.com, and we will pass them on to Stuart, and then he can either arrange a chat with you, or we'll and then obviously let us know if you want some more finance clinics on any topics, and we can drop us a line on Instagram and we can schedule some more. Yeah.
Tash, just wanted to say thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to have a chat about debt and about financial services. And I hope that we'll be doing at least 3 or 4 webinars on different subjects. But thank you. Thank you all for coming and joining.
And have a good day, everybody.